Welcome back to the third episode in this four-part holiday trigger series. And today we're talking all about family dynamics, how to navigate difficult family dynamics, how to navigate setting boundaries, and how to protect yourself, your relationship with yourself, and your intimate relationship with your partner from outside stressors this holiday season. Let's dive in. Welcome to Essence, the podcast that helps you liberate yourself by understanding the heart of your relationship patterns. For the empathetic woman ready to transform that relationship overwhelm into liberation, I'm Olivia Heine, your host and coach in NLP, cycle syncing, and relationship dynamics. I'm here to guide you through emotional regulation, shadow work, and self-discovery that leads to true healing. If you're someone who feels deeply, who often puts your needs last, or is navigating challenging times in your relationship, you are in the right place. Together, we'll explore what it means to show up authentically, articulate your needs, and embrace the kind of conflict that can actually cultivate deeper connection, so that you can create more fulfilling relationships by being fully seen. This is all about uncovering the essence of who you are and how and why you show up in your relationships the way that you do. So let's dive in. Welcome back to Essence. I'm Olivia Heine, your host, and I'm here to help you go from overwhelmed to liberated in your relationship dynamics. Understanding how to navigate things as they come up in your relationships is one of the most powerful ways that you can support yourself through growth in your life, because your one-on-one relationships are truly some of the most triggering relationships that you will have in your life, because they tend to show you a mirrored reflection of exactly what's going on within you, exactly the things that maybe you don't want to look at within yourself, or that maybe you don't like within yourself, or the things that you're being asked to heal within yourself. And so understanding yourself so well so that you understand your triggers was going to help you really navigate this and things, situations, dynamics as they come up with so much ease and grace. And inevitably, you're going to have a lot of one-on-one relationships in your life, or consistent one-on-one relationships in your life, such as a partner of your choosing for your life, for example, family members, for example. And so it is so important. I cannot emphasize that enough, to know how to navigate these dynamics, to know how to hold yourself, and to know how to show up authentically, to stand in your truth in situations as they arise, as opposed to falling into old patterns. And we're going to talk a lot about that today, because when we go back to our home of origin, our roots from our family, from the generations and lineages that came before us, which we tend to do around the holiday season, that also tends to be the place where our initial root triggers were born, and where they can re-arise and come back up, and where you say, wow, I thought I've been doing a lot of healing work around this, and now it's coming back tenfold and I'm feeling really goddamn triggered, right? And so understanding not only what dynamics are going on, understanding how to hold yourself through challenging dynamics, and also how to set boundaries that protect the integrity of your relationship, either with that person, like with that family member, or it could also be the relationship with yourself, so staying true to yourself, or the relationship with your partner, because often we can then project our own frustrations or triggers that we're feeling in those family dynamics back onto our relationships. So understanding all of those moving pieces is what we're going to talk about today, and to really make sure that you feel supported in that. And we're really going to dive into some of the unconscious patterns, or family patterns, generational patterns that might be showing up for you in your life, cycles that you might want to step up and break, and really understand again how these dynamics and how these patterns can reflect back and impact your partnerships, reflect shadows within yourself that affect your partnerships, and how you can really feel supported through that. So the first thing I want to say here, and I think this is just important to welcome you in if this is you, and to remind you that this is powerful work that you're doing. And the conversations we're having here, my intention is to emphasize that this is a safe space for you to do this work, to reflect on this stuff, to have these conversations. As an empathetic human being, which if you're in this space, I'm assuming you are, or there's elements of you yourself where you're like, yeah, I care really deeply, or I feel really deeply, or I feel like I'm more of a sensitive person or a sensitive soul. It's really easy to take on the emotions of other people and to take on responsibility of other people and of other people's emotions. And a lot of times the responses and the reactions that we have that specifically show up in our one-on-one relationship. So if you're someone who is constantly in your intimate relationship with your partner, your romantic relationship, thinking, I wonder if he's mad at me, or like, oh my God, like he's stressed right now about work. I feel anxious. I feel like I have to make it better. Or when he gets upset about something or they get upset about something, you're like, oh, I want to fix it. Like, how do I fix it? How do I make this better again? These responses come from core root experiences of feeling like you needed to be the peacekeeper, feeling like you needed to please in order to receive some form of love or validation, feeling like things needed to be perfect. So harmonious, no dissonance, no fighting, no disagreement, no conflict, in order for you to be in a place of connection. It's all pointing back to these core root experiences that most likely either came from experiences that you had growing up, so from a familial environment, or that are generational patterns that have simply repeated themselves because that's what your parents saw their parents do, and their parents saw their parents do. And these are things that we socially pick up on. We're conditioned within these patterns because we are constantly reaffirmed by the people teaching us those, so our parents and their parents and etc., back through the lineages, that these are the things that we need to do in order to survive. And surviving as a child means receiving love. Because if we receive love, that means we receive support, we receive attention, which means we're being fed, we're being cared for, we're being, taken care of, we're making sure that we're warm at night when it's cold outside, all of these really basic human instinct and primal survival responses. But we can't separate the fact that we don't need those anymore because now you're an adult, grown person, right? You can hold yourself, you can take care of yourself. But those same conditionings, those same belief systems are still so deeply ingrained in yourself that there was never a switch that went off when you suddenly became an adult that said, oh, you don't need to ask for this stuff anymore. You don't need to adjust yourself to make sure that you receive this. You can now go on and do your own thing. No, they're so deeply ingrained that you're going to keep playing out these particular belief patterns. But essentially, these go back generationally most of the time. And so one thing to really consider as you move into this holiday season, and this goes back to my initial point because I really went off on a tangent there, but this concept of like welcoming you into this space as a cycle breaker. That's what I wanted to say. Because feeling so deeply, but then also doing this work and recognizing patterns that are coming up in your lineage and saying, I don't want to be enacting these patterns anymore. I don't want to keep supporting these patterns or keep feeding into these patterns. I want to change something here. That is no easy feat, right? Let's just say it as it is. This is not a walk in the park. Like, you have been called into a deep healing path. And that's an incredibly beautiful mission to be called towards, to be called upon. It's part of your life journey, your life mission. That's a core belief of what I see in this work is like the women who come through here. It's not just like, oh, it would be nice to like have this or to be like this. No, you're doing like core deep healing work. And this is soul work. This is work that you have been called towards. And you feel that within yourself as you go through this. Maybe not at the beginning, but specifically when you're on the journey or when you look back, you're like, oh, I see how everything was really connected here. But the people around you might not feel the same way, right? And not everyone else is on this cycle breaking journey like you are. And so it's really important to feel welcome in this space, in my personal opinion, and to feel like you have a community supporting you when your immediate environment might not look like that, right? It might not be supportive of that. And especially coming back to the theme of holidays, and we're going to get into the family dynamic stuff now, but coming back to that environment, you might not feel like the other people around you are on that same journey or are wanting to do that work, and that is okay. The point is that you are showing up in that work. You are seeing yourself and stepping into the cycle breaker role. However, when you do so, what often comes with that is you become the most triggering person in your family. That doesn't have to be true. Obviously, that's not an absolute. But most likely, because you are putting your foot down on things, you are showing up differently than how people have come to expect you to be. You are setting boundaries that might be triggering or hurtful to other people, but protecting your peace, that might trigger the people around you. So let's talk about how you can hold yourself through that today and really come back to holding yourself in your boundaries as well. Because again, as this empathetic human being, if you resonate with that, it can feel really easy in the moment as well to adjust, to want to step back on your boundaries, to question yourself and wonder, is it really that bad? Or am I overreacting here? Or maybe I did do something wrong. Maybe I should have done this better. Maybe I should have worked harder. Maybe I could have been more perfect. Maybe I shouldn't have reacted like that. And those are also great reflective questions to ask. However, the reason why I really lean into that side of the narrative is because most of the women in this community, the clients that I work with, the humans that I attract and that I call in with this work, we are overgivers. You are over giving yourself. You are showing up for the people in your life. You want to please. You want to make it perfect. You want to give love and receive love. And therefore, often you adjust yourself to please and et cetera, all the things that I've already mentioned. And so it's less about saying, are you reflecting and are you making sure that you weren't the one that maybe overstepped? I mean, we are talking about that stuff. We are talking about the shadow work. We are doing that deep mirror work because relationships are always mirroring something that's happening within you. But my point being, I don't think that our role in this podcast and in this community is saying like, are you making sure that you're not in the wrong? Because most of the time we're doing that all the time, right? We're always questioning, am I in the wrong? Should I have done this better? All that stuff. So this is your chance to really stand strong in your boundaries and stand in your own corner, have your own back and be like, no, I stand for this. And I know that this is true and I'm not going to adjust myself. I don't need to second guess myself. I am fully behind myself on this point. So we've already talked about why family gatherings or family situations can evoke such emotional responses like defensiveness, insecurities, people pleasing, or just revealing some shadow parts of yourself where we're like, oh, I thought I was done with that. I thought I'd healed that or outgrown that, but now it's back. Simply because this is where your core experiences come from, right? And so they can be triggered in a very real way or in a much deeper way than maybe other situations in your life trigger you because they're reflections of that core experience. So what we really want to understand when you're coming to set your boundaries in this dynamic is number one, how deeply you already understand your relationship patterns. And I talked about this in the first episode of this holiday series. So you can go and find that in the show notes and go take a listen to that, because understanding what your patterns are and just being able to have a general overview, even if you maybe don't have time to do all that reflective work right now or dig really deep into what's actually coming up for you, that's okay. Don't overburden yourself, especially during this season. But being able to say, generally, I know that I react this way, or generally, I know that XYZ triggers me, or this particular person tends to be someone where I adjust my boundaries a lot. Just creating awareness around where you maybe feel triggered, what patterns show up for you, and noticing how maybe that also is reflected back or projected onto other people. So maybe you project that onto the people who are closest to you. So if you are really close to a particular family member or even with your intimate relationship, right? Noticing, bringing awareness to that. And if you do have the communication set up in your intimate relationship in a way that you already feel safe, or you're already having these conversations around deeper patterns and what's going on beneath the surface, this is a really good time to share with that person before you go into that environment, into that scenario where you might be triggered, so that you feel supported. And if you do know what you need to be supported in that moment or in that dynamic, a really great time to let your partner know about that as well. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is boundary setting. And we've already touched on this a little bit, but what I really want to emphasize is that traditional boundary setting advice isn't actually enough, right? And I personally have experienced this. I've seen this over and over again with clients because we go in and we say, this is my boundary and I'm going to set it. But then you're in the situation with a person and they're pointing fingers potentially, or blaming, or getting upset, or feeling hurt. You as an empathetic person are feeling sad about this dynamic. Maybe you're feeling anxious. Maybe your heart's beating really fast. Maybe you're feeling like your throat is closing up. You can't think clearly. You're feeling like emotionally overwhelmed by the situation. Maybe you're taking on the emotions of the other person. You're like, oh my God, I feel so bad that they feel bad. Maybe I am the villain. Maybe I did do something wrong. Maybe I should be the one to say sorry. And all of a sudden, it's hard to set the boundary, right? Or the boundary doesn't get set at all, or you adjust your boundary. And not because you didn't go in with the best of intention to set that boundary, to hold yourself to that, but in the moment, all of these underlying things took over, right? These underlying fears, the underlying needs, the underlying shadows, the attachments to whatever this person means to you, or whatever this person is kind of reflecting back to you from your core experiences. Maybe this person was literally part of forming those core experiences. And so it's bringing you back to this childhood self that feels like she just needs protection or support or belonging. And so again, immediately it's like, oh, what did I do back then to get that? And we adjust ourselves, or you're adjusting yourself then. And so this can keep you stuck in old family roles and old cycles that are playing out, right? Boundaries are important. Absolutely. But again, tell me how freaking nervous you feel about actually setting that boundary. How worried you feel about the reaction that you're going to get, or the response that you'll receive, or hurting someone's feelings, or even in this scenario, ruining the holiday, right? I'm putting quotations for those of you who can't see me because that is absolutely nothing that you should be worried about. But of course, it feels really, really big. So this is where the first thing to do when it comes to boundary setting is actually getting so clear on what you need in this dynamic, so that you've done that from a place of being neutral in your emotions, neutral in your response. So you're not making that decision from a triggered or emotionally heightened place. And to the best of your ability, get really clear on what it is that you need from this dynamic, from this relationship, from this interaction. The second part to that then is healing the attachment to taking responsibility for someone else's emotions, or feeling like it's your job to fix things. So this is healing the root causes of people pleasing, of perfectionism, of these responses that you're going to get from other people, the anxiety that comes up around that. In order to set healthy boundaries, you need to heal those dynamics, those belief systems, those patterns that are playing out beneath the surface. And of course, that's probably not going to happen in the next 2 days before the holiday season begins, right? Or maybe you're already in it and you're listening to this at a later date. So what we want to focus on here is getting clear on what your boundaries are before going into the conversation, or before going into the dynamic, what you need, so that you can't be swayed, but also noticing if you are feeling anxious in the moment when these things come up, or you are feeling inclined to adjust your boundary because of how the other person is responding in a really hurt way, or you're feeling like it's your responsibility, etc. This is where you want to be focusing on the deeper healing work. This is what we do inside Liberation. This is what I do inside one-on-one coaching, because you don't need to show up to that conversation or that dynamic feeling so anxious, feeling like you're about to be swayed. You get to show up to that conversation or to that situation and dynamic feeling so fucking strong in who you are, in what you need, in your authenticity, and holding yourself in that, because that is the true support system, right? That's the true emotional stability. And that's also the true love and belonging that you're receiving. You're getting that from yourself. You no longer need that from the other person. And again, receiving that based on adjusting yourself isn't authentic either, right? That isn't authentic receiving of love and belonging, right? And that doesn't make anyone in this dynamic bad. It doesn't put blame on the other person who you're in this interaction with. So the family member or your parent or cousin or whoever it is. It simply means that you don't need to adjust yourself anymore. You get to stand strong in that. And part of setting boundaries is being okay with ruffling some feathers, being okay with being the villain sometimes, And the only way you can be okay with that is if you're so strong again in your own inner support system, grounding yourself emotionally, feeling supported emotionally within yourself. We cannot be looking outside of ourselves for that anymore, even though our inner child wants to. And especially going back to the place where you were a child at one point, or in the dynamics where you were a child, those things could be really easy to kind of really sneakily creep their way back in. Does that make sense? Let me know in the comments, wherever you're listening to this, how this hits home, how this resonates, and if you have any questions, because there's just so many layers of what's playing out here. And there's only so much that I can fit into like 20, 25 minutes of a short 4-part series. So let's talk about 2 small tools, action steps that you can take to support yourself in setting boundaries in your family dynamics, in your familial relationships, or in the process of breaking cycles that might have played out for generations and generations this holiday season. So again, this is taking out the piece of you're going to be doing tons of inner healing work and actually shifting the way you feel about setting boundaries and showing up and having these conversations. That's a whole other path that I highly encourage you to go down. And again, to check out Liberation, to check out one-on-one coaching, book a call with me, and we can chat about what that could look like for you. But that's a whole other ballgame, right? What I want to give you right now are tools that are actually simple, small, actionable, and that are going to support you in like the next couple days, right? So the first thing is energetic boundary setting. On the one hand, it's really, really powerful to be able to communicate your boundaries and your needs. And if you are feeling like there's a safe environment and it's a safe relationship to do so, I encourage you to do that. Again, there's so many things that I could talk about here, and I teach how to consciously communicate and communicate on a real underlying level, because we often just do surface level communication. I teach that in my course, but really tune into your intuition here and go with your best judgment. But there might also be a moment where you're like, talking about it isn't going to solve anything right now. I also don't want to put a wrench in, this holiday season, but I also don't want to not show up fully as myself. So an energetic boundary is about setting a boundary for yourself internally. And the really interesting thing when we work with energy and our energy within ourselves is that everything that's happening within us is going to be reflected back in our environment around us. Maybe not immediately, but over time. And so when we set a boundary within ourselves and we make a decision of like, I don't put up with this anymore, or this is my new standard, or if this and this happens, I'm just going to get up and leave the room because I don't want to be in that environment, or I don't need to sit and listen to that, or I can let that person know like, hey, like, thanks for sharing, but no thanks, kind of thing. And again, tuning into your intuition around like, what is safe here? What can you do in what environment? But the point being, you are making that decision on an energetic level for yourself, and you are letting that be a way that you show up authentically for yourself. So when I say authentically, I mean not adjusting yourself to fit the dynamic that's expected of you or that you think is expected of you. So making that internal decision, that is an energetic boundary for yourself. And you can make that energetic boundary into a mantra. You can repeat that to yourself. You can have that kind of as your little inner reminder, safety net, intention for the holiday season. The second little tool, which is so powerful, but so simple, is to become the watcher. So instead of going in here, especially if you are someone who's like done a lot of work or read a lot of books and you've been reflecting a lot, you've been journaling, you've been doing all of this release work, there might be an inclination to want to go in and like tell your family what's up, right? And be like, this is how you're acting, and like, this is really where this comes from, and this is the pattern playing out. And that might just not be the most productive thing for this dynamic. Maybe it is. And again, I'll let you be the judge of that. And instead of getting sucked into situations, practice watching. Watch the interactions. Notice how you feel triggered. Notice when you feel called to respond, how you feel called to respond, if you feel called to respond. Notice and watch what emotions arise, and watch or notice what you are feeling like you need in this dynamic. So if you are feeling triggered, can you, instead of looking outside of yourself and reacting to the situation at hand, can you turn within and say, why am I feeling triggered right now? What is this communicating to me about what I need on an emotional inner level? And is there a way that I can give that to myself? So those are two really simple practices and tools. Number one, creating the energetic boundary, and number two, becoming the watcher. And these are really simple, powerful ways that you can just navigate through whatever dynamic might come up, situations or relationships that are at play, and allowing yourself to still remain true and authentic to yourself, but knowing that that also doesn't mean you needing to share everything with everyone or you needing to outright communicate everything. And also understanding that the process of being a cycle breaker, of breaking a generational cycle that has potentially been playing out for many, many, many generations, is a process. It's a beautiful thing for you to recognize that and for you to stand in that, and also recognizing that it's most likely going to trigger some people, and knowing that you get to hold yourself in your own energetic boundary, in your own needs, in your own truth in that, and allow yourself to stand with that, not needing to adjust, and let that be okay. Okay, this was the third episode. Next week is going to be the fourth episode, and we're going to talk all about authenticity, how to really stay true to yourself, even when the dynamics at play are maybe making you want to adjust. So come back and tune in for that. Thank you so much for being here. Again, please like, subscribe, leave a rating and review, share, pass this episode along. It helps us grow this little podcast. And I'm so grateful for all the new downloads and listens that we're getting every single week. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so grateful that you're here, and I will see you back here next week. Thank you for joining me on Essence. I hope today's episode gave you new insights and encouragement on your path to showing up authentically and embracing honest communication and connection. Remember, each step you take, whether it's setting a boundary, speaking up for your needs, or recognizing a pattern, brings you closer to a liberated, empowered self. If this episode resonated with you, please share it or leave a review to help us reach more listeners. Until next time, stay true to your essence, trust in your path, and keep showing up as the cycle breaker you are.